It's Julian Assange and WikiLeaks that have returned honor to journalism. Julian is a truth teller, and that's what has upset those who continue what Goebbels called the big lie.
Okay, that was John Pilger at the very top from April 11th, 2017, the initial voyage of Assange Countdown to Freedom. It was with him and Julian Assange on that show, and it's been 5 years and a month plus since we did that. And that was back at WBAI, and those photos were of Max Blumenthal, the editor of The Gray Zone, the great investigative journalist, and he's our only guest, special guest today. And by the way, my name's Randy Credico. This is Randy Credico Live on the Fly, Assange Countdown to Freedom. I just want to make a few announcements before we get to Max. And first of all, my closest friend, the great comedian Dan Vitale, died last Friday. Not this Friday before, but the one Friday before that. And we are going to have a memorial for him this Sunday at the West Bank Cafe at 7:30 p.m. West Bank Cafe, 400-something West 42nd Street. So there he is. Dan and I started out at the bitter end in 1982 when I came to New York City, and we were the closest friends ever since. So please, if you're in town, drop by. And then I want to talk about this Tuesday, the 17th, when Priti Patel makes her decision earlier that day, London time, if she's going to sign the papers to extradite Julian Assange. There will be an event at 1 p.m. at the Department of Justice on Pennsylvania and 10th Street Northwest, I believe, at 1 p.m. And Max will be one of and his lovely spouse, the brilliant investigative journalist herself, Anya Parampil, will be one of the speakers, Lou Wolf, and a host of others, Chip Gibbons, and many others, Leo Flores. So that's at 1 p.m. at the Department of Justice on Pennsylvania and 10th Street Northwest. All right, so we're going to talk today with Max about Julian Assange and also dig in deep as to what's happening, since we've all been so gaslit by the media on the situation in Ukraine. We're going to shine some light, or Max is, on what the backstory is and what's really going on. So stick around. This is a little Shostakovich. I'm surprised he's not banned in this country, Shostakovich, and we'll be with one of his suites, and then a little clip of Julian Assange, and we'll be right back with Max Blumenthal.
The Vietnam War and the push for US involvement was a result of the Gulf of Tonkin incident. A lie. The Iraq War famously is a result of lies. Wars in Somalia are a result of lies. The Second World War and the German invasion of Poland was a result of carefully constructed lies. That is war by media. Let us ask ourselves of the complicit media, which is the majority of the mainstream press? What is the average death count attributed to each journalist?
Okay, there you go. I don't think there's anything there that that dangerous man who now sits in a prison for 3 years, ensconced in basically a ground floor version of the Tower of London, being tortured psychologically and physically. That little speech there that he gave in 2010, Max, I think you would concur. By the way, this is Max Blumenthal with everything that he said. And when you look at that speech, Max, what goes through your head?
Well, first of all, apologies for the hostage video if you're watching this on YouTube or anywhere else.
I love because you have a great sense of humor.
I'm over at a friend's place and just don't have the ability to shed any light on the subject of myself. So yeah, I'm backlit here. I've actually been watching that speech over and over for the past few weeks because the media has driven this escalation in Ukraine in a way we haven't seen since after 9/11, but I think it's actually more intense than the propaganda we saw leading up to the war in Iraq, because media proliferates so much more comprehensively throughout our lives than it ever has before. The war in Iraq was sold through newspapers and broadcast media. The proxy war in Ukraine, and Steny Hoyer, I think he's the Democrat majority leader in the House. He has said we are at war. The United States is at war. How did we get?
Said that too.
Yeah. How did we get here? Well, the media, the journalists, the Beltway press, who Donald Trump correctly identified for the maybe wrong reasons as an enemy of the people, are driving this, doing their jobs as stenographers involved in an information war. They really believe in their own side of the war is the most powerful weapon that NATO, Ukraine, and the United States has here. And it is a war, and the information war is designed to escalate the military war, to drag not just the American military, but the American people into this conflict where they have no interest. There's no national interest. There's no economic interest that the American people have here. There is, however, a strong economic interest for a sector of the American economy, and I guess the population, that's been doing very well, while most people have been suffering the effects of a controlled demolition of the economy. And those are the people who will benefit from the $40 billion that was just signed off by every Democrat in Congress. They're the contractors. They're what we call the Beltway bandits here in Washington. Deloitte, Booz Allen, BAE Systems. They're all the weapons firms and Raytheon. I mean, the arms dealers, but you also have just all the private contractors, the private spies. They get all these contracts, and they are gentrifying Washington. If you see these kind of drone-like modern loft-style apartments going up in black neighborhoods around the city, they're the low-level, mid-level contractor people working at the law firms and pushing papers. Then if you go out to Loudoun County, one of the highest income per capita counties in America, you're going to see big McMansions. Those are the lobbyists. Those are the executives. Those are the board members at Raytheon. And then you got the defense secretary, Lloyd Austin. I mean, he himself was a board member at Lockheed Martin, just as his predecessors under Trump were. So we're witnessing the media. What do they get out of it? Well, they just get career advancement, and they get to have jobs and prestige in a dying industry that is hated by most Americans for a good reason. They're all kind of interlocked, working together in this disgusting project that serves no one but themselves. And Assange's speech really crystallizes how the system operates. And he was saying it before, I think, the American public had the understanding it has now.
Yeah.
Just real quickly, just something about Assange. I spoke at a rally in Los Angeles against the COVID mandates, and calling for accountability and for public workers who have been fired from their jobs for refusing to take the jab. I mean, people who are public school teachers, firefighters, frontline workers, to call for them to get their jobs back. And this whole agenda has been sold in the same way, with the same level of propaganda and censorship, information warfare, that the wars have been sold. And so I made that comparison, and I said to the crowd, I addressed this crowd, there were a number of leftists and left-wing kind of people, anti-war people in the crowd, but it was also a conservative-leaning crowd, as you would expect at a rally like this. And I said, I want to talk about the bravest journalist of our time. His name is Julian Assange. And immediately the crowd erupted in cheers for Julian Assange.
I saw that speech. It was, I was trying to dig it up today. It was an incredible speech.
Which shows you how much consciousness there is out there, even in circles that a lot of people don't expect to have that level of awareness about Assange. People who I think used to comprise the Republican base and are now going independent and are disgusted with the mainstream Republicans, who are disgusted with the 40 billion, and who saw like their representatives, some of the America Firster types, actually be the only ones to rebel against this 40 billion. But they knew who Assange was. They cared about him. They understood what he had done to help them reach that level of understanding. And his name is now, I think, more well known than it was when he was active, due to his persecution.
Yeah, like I said, we have to find allies. We certainly are not finding them in liberal circles or this so-called resistance circle. You're not getting it from black politicians, like Clyburn. You're not even getting it from the Fraud Squad. They're not out there. There was one guy, Ro Khanna, I guess his name is, that did one of these shows and spoke out for Assange in a tepid way. But there was more people in April of 1933 who voted against the Enabling Act. That Hitler put out there, and they were all Christian Democrats, than there was in the House the other day. So everyone is afraid.
They're afraid. Yeah, it's pure McCarthyism.
Yeah, well, but as far as Assange goes, and here I am conflating it with the vote the other day. But the vote the other day is pretty much representative of those who oppose Assange.
Well, Assange spoke about a similar situation when he addressed Afghanistan. And he said, and this was back in, I think, 2011, he said, Afghanistan is just a means for the Beltway bandits that I was talking about before, and their cadres and their apparatchiks in a national security state, to wash money through another country, first to extract it from the American taxpayer, wash it through another country back into their pockets. That's all Afghanistan. That's a large part of what Afghanistan was about, and why it lasted so long, and why the Pentagon had such a strong bureaucratic interest in destroying every possible negotiation or ceasefire with the Taliban, is that they were making a literal killing, trillions of dollars. Everyone asks, where did it go? Well, they know.
Do you think, Max, that when they closed shop there, that they were actually setting up shop around Ukraine? That would be the next conflict that they had in mind, that they're closing the shop there in Afghanistan. They've drained the treasury there, and now they could move it somewhere else. Do you think that was in the back of their mind, or was that pre-planned?
Yeah, after Ukraine, they can pivot to Taiwan. There's no shortage of areas where they can keep active conflicts going that stimulate the war chest of the defense. I wouldn't even call it the defense, the war state. And a large part of the American economy runs on military Keynesianism. Then, it's necessary for these conflicts to take place because they can battle test the various weapons and that they then put on the international market. No one wants to by a missile system or a platform that hasn't been tested before. So the Ukrainian military right now is under enormous pressure from arms dealers around the world that are dumping arms into the conflict to test them, to use them. Turkey wants them to use the Bayraktar drone and show that they're successful. They had some success at the beginning of the war against unguarded Russian convoys, but right now they're getting shot down by, not the most sophisticated Russian anti-aircraft system, but they keep deploying them. They're continuing to deploy the Javelin missile. That's, the cash cow for Raytheon right now. Joe Biden went down to the Raytheon plant in Alabama to celebrate them as like the engine of the American economy in the South. It was amazing. He was introduced by a Black woman who works there, who got up and said, "We have manufactured 50,000 Javelin missiles, 50,000." And the whole, crowd, which was just employees of Raytheon, just went bonkers. And then they brought Biden up there. Wow. So it's clear what's going on here. One thing that was earmarked in the $40 billion that no one's talking about, Claymore mines, anti-personnel mines. Remember, Princess Diana was going around the world doing a PR campaign against anti-personnel mines because they were blowing the legs off of children in Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. Children in conflicts in Africa were stepping on mines in the fields, and she died soon after under, I would say, strange circumstances after initiating that campaign. But the U.S. taxpayer just laid down millions and millions of dollars to lay untold numbers of mines and who knows who they'll kill. Hundreds of millions of dollars were earmarked for the Ukrainian SBU. This is the security service of the Ukrainian post-Maidan regime that is arresting, disappearing, torturing, and killing anyone who challenges the regime in Kiev. Dissidents, human rights advocates, ethnic Russians who speak out on Facebook against the war, communists, leftists, even libertarians, Eurosceptics, anyone. 13 parties were banned by Zelensky. That's all of his opposition. His top opponent, the second most popular politician in Ukraine, Viktor Medvedchuk, was jailed on Zelensky's personal orders and his party was banned. It's like if the Democrats banned the Republican Party and just arrested Trump instead of just removing his Twitter account. Medvedchuk showed up with bruises all over his face in a prison photo. This is what's going on in Ukraine, and the SBU is working hand in glove with hardcore neo-Nazis to carry this campaign of repression out. It's like Chile in 1973. It's like a high-tech Pinochet's Chile, and the U.S. taxpayer just gave hundreds of millions of dollars to this blood-stained apparatus without almost any debate.
Well, there's not, Max, there really is not, it goes back, I want to show you a clip that John Pilger, from his article in 2014, kind of forewarned, very prescient, this clip by John Pilger to break the silence. World War is beckoning. And he wrote that it was an op-ed piece. He was freelancing for The Guardian. And did you read that article? And it talks about the coup and all of the neo-Nazis that were within the coup leadership and part of the armed forces and security forces. And he got sacked by that. He actually got sacked in 2014. But if you read that article, it pretty much, predicted what's happening today. I want to really get into this about the Azov, this guy Kerensky. The biggest question I have about Kerensky right now, why does he have two wives? I'm just joking, in his name, but just joking. I want to cap this on Assange. Assange would probably be talking about this right now, but he is ensconced. He can't talk. He can't write. And before we go, spend the last half of the show going into the Ukrainian situation real deeply. How important is Assange, his case to you? I'm going to see you Tuesday at 1 p.m. How important, how significant is this case to you in terms of the future of a free press?
Well, we see ourselves at the Gray Zone as aiming to continue the work of WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. And if Julian Assange can be tortured and killed in prison, then so can we. Beyond that, Julian Assange is someone who understood how power truly operates in an empire, and is someone that I've learned an enormous amount from, who's a guide, a journalistic and intellectual guide in so many ways. So we need him. And, you know, over these years, I've gotten to know his friends and his family. And, you know, on a personal, emotional level, it's very painful for me to witness the cavalry that he's been put through.
It's amazing. You take a look at that speech. I mean, I visited him 3 times. If you don't believe that, you can see it at the UC Global website, which, you know, you did, I think, the last 2 shows I did with you on of any length were the 2 revelatory explosive articles that you did in the Gray Zone on UC Global, the assassination attempt, which was later confirmed by 30 CIA agents that are not going to talk to you, but you had already brought this up. And then the role of the Sands GM, our owner, the late Sheldon Adelson. So the big question is, what are they afraid of here? I mean, why are they doing this? I mean, do you really think there's any, can I be optimistic that he might get off? Or are they that afraid of Julian Assange, as Craig Murray pointed out 2 weeks ago on the show?
Well, they want to, I mean, there was a Stratfor email that actually WikiLeaks exposed, Stratfor being the kind of private spying firm, another Beltway bandit, although they have, you know, offices around the world that advises the CIA in many cases. And they proposed a strategy of moving Assange around from various courts and just keeping him out of the public eye and muzzling him for as long as possible, instead of just directly assassinating him. Although we know from the UC Global files that there was a proposal that came down through Pompeo and the CIA to assassinate him outright. The more sophisticated strategy, I guess the Democrat strategy, was just do what is currently being done to him. And I think they want to kill him by other means. He's not doing well, as you've seen the photos you've exposed of him in court. So that's what's taking place right now. It's to deactivate him, because he was a unique individual who was a visionary and conceived something so dangerous to the secret governments that pose as intelligence agencies. He truly created an intelligence agency for the people, in the tradition of other whistleblowers like Philip Agee, who basically had to leave the United States with his life. So, of course, I don't have any expectation of a positive result from Priti Patel at the UK Home Office. And I should mention that we just published a piece at the Gray Zone relying on leaked emails, the kind of emails that would have shown up on WikiLeaks at another time if Julian Assange were with us as a free man, possibly. And we analyzed over a gigabyte of these emails and found that a secret intelligence coup had taken place that may have resulted in the installation of Boris Johnson as prime minister. It was carried out by a cabal of intelligence operatives, billionaire financiers, and in support of a hard Brexit. And they aimed to destroy Theresa May as prime minister and get someone in who will enact their agenda. Very few of these people were well known. Among them was the former MI6 chief, Richard Dearlove, however. He had even tried to enlist Henry Kissinger, his friend, into this plot. But most of these people were not well known. They were operating behind a curtain. They were trying to manipulate Brexit for their own ends, whereas the British worker voted for Brexit for a completely different reason. And they were the ones in control of the agenda through conniving and likely criminality. So what is the relevance here? By the way, we've looked for stuff about Assange in these files, and so far, no dice, unfortunately. But what is the relevance here? The relevance is that these operatives appear to have been able to corrupt the Home Office. They at least were attempting to corrupt Priti Patel's Home Office. And it really demonstrates the anti-democratic quality of the kind of people who are in Boris Johnson's administration and now have the power to decide Julian Assange's fate. They have no accountability to the public. Nobody elected them. Most people don't even know who they are. And they're calling the shots.
So, here we're going to be out there on the 17th. I've been doing this for 5 years. You've done a number of stories, explosive stories on the Assange case. You've got the Ziggy scandal up there in Iceland, and the child molester as their key witness. You've got the FOIA. You got the FOIA corruption that was exposed to the FOIA request by Stefani Marizzi, the complicity with the CPS and the Swedish prosecutor Marian Nye. And you've got the assassination attempt, and we can go on and on. I'm leaving a lot of, dirty laundry out there. And it doesn't seem like any of it has any effect on the powers that be, whether it those in the courtroom, the judges, Priti Patel, the Guardian, none of these newspapers, Boris Johnson. It has no effect going up to the Supreme Court. It's just one scandal after another. UC Global, the spying, and there you go. You would think at this point. So what the fuck has got to be done at this point? Are we just spinning our wheels right now? I mean, I'm going to continue because I think it's that important. I think that it's over here. Pilger said that they can forget this ersatz democracy as it is. You can even wipe that off.
Yeah, I mean, he's right. What's happening is that the mask has been lifted. I mean, the masks that were mandated for average people, while the elites walk around at the Met Gala and other glitzy events without them, is the perfect metaphor, but for how average people see things now. The mask is off on liberal democracy, and the people who are truly in power are widely hated, have almost no credibility with the public, and have nothing but this corporate media. It's basically a corporate state media apparatus or megaphone at their disposal. I mean, it was the perfect scene at the White House Press Correspondents Association dinner to see Joe Biden joke about how the only people more hated in the country than him are the people in the audience there. And then they all just laughed and patted themselves on the back. Wow. So what can they do but jail Julian Assange? What can they do but set up a disinformation governance board to legislate reality and the truth through a national security ministry? Yeah,
you know what, Max? I want to get into that. I need to take a quick 30-second break, and we'll go talk about this new agency and get back to Ukraine and censorship and all of that for the second half. We'll be right back. I'm Randy Credico live on the fly with a special edition of Assange Countdown to Freedom with my special guest, Max Blumenthal. This is Humoresque. We'll be right back. Okay, I'm Randy Credico. As I said, this is live on the fly, Assange Countdown to Freedom. Max Blumenthal, this new DHS, and I saw you talking about the woman that's heading it. Can you, for the people out there that don't know about it, I only know about it by reading their tweets. I mean, I don't watch anything on television anymore. So I didn't even know about it until I saw your tweet. So give us the background on this woman and what the job entails.
Well, the point I'm making is that the national security state is engaged in a process of the Assangeification of alternative and independent media and social media as well. They were able to nail Assange through a series of, put up of investigations over crimes that he didn't commit. And then it ultimately led to a secret indictment under the Espionage Act. They can't do that for every journalist who interferes with their objectives. They can't do that for people on social media who are tweeting about security state intrigues, for example, or questioning Anthony Fauci. So what they do is define it all as disinformation, which means that they are the ultimate arbiters of the truth, reality, and facts, when they are in fact the ultimate disseminators of disinformation, and in the most consequential sense, because they are the ones who launch the wars and justify them. And they're formalizing this process through Nina Jankowicz, who is younger than me, someone who is probably insane. If you watch her Broadway numbers where she does songs about disinformation and it's like Mary Poppins on methamphetamine singing about Russiagate. And Alexander Mayorkas, the DHS secretary, said he'd never seen these videos before when he was grilled about it. But she'd managed to, go to bat for the Biden administration and present herself as a disinformation expert, which is like a phony expertise, and create this little disinformation governance board to start to work on how to take on every discussion, piece of media, tweet, Facebook post, TikTok video, and chat room discussion that threatens the establishment. Does it mean they're going to censor it, delete it all, jail everyone? No. What they're going to do is get control of the algorithm. And they're trying to force social media companies to let their own people in the door sit over their shoulders and tell them what to suppress, what to amplify, and what to outright censor. And we've been seeing it happen for the past few years. It's harder. It's going to be harder for people to access this video than it would be, a video of like Mehdi Hassan farting and coughing on MSNBC in his little basement, because he's amplified, and this discussion will not be. It might be suppressed. And if we have another kind of discussion about banned topics, then you'll just be censored outright. So Nina Jankowicz is just a human embodiment of this kind of process of a completely discredited, putative liberal democracy, just trying to drown out all opposition. And of course, they're most concerned with opposition on the anti-establishment right. They're not that threatened by the left. They're certainly not threatened by, the people who helped put Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in office. They're not that threatened by them. They're not that threatened by the Bernie movement. They might have been if Bernie had actually fought, but they're not now. They're threatened by the America Firsters, and this all emanates from the paranoia over Trump getting elected in 2016. But it can switch. It can switch. I mean, it can go. We can be targeted, like the left, if it does manage to take power in a meaningful way, the anti-war left, and actually does something. It's not doing anything right now. It's pathetic to witness what's become of the anti-war left. But at some point, if there's a resurgence, they'll feel what large segments of the right are feeling.
Well, just wait a second. There are people out there. I consider myself anti-war left, and a lot of others. I mean, Joe Loria and Mint Press and all these others who had their PayPal accounts taken away. And you see people being thrown off of Twitter, just countless. I mean, I was banned off of Facebook for a month. I don't even know why. Craig Murray was thrown off of Facebook. So I don't know who makes.
Well, Craig Murray was thrown in jail.
Yes, and then thrown in off of Facebook. Recently, and his numbers. I look at your numbers, things that you used to tweet out. A normal thing that used to would get 1,500, 1,600 retweets are now getting 200, maybe 250. I mean, I see John Pilger the same way. He used to get 5,000. Maybe I'll get 1,200. I just take a look at the numbers. Craig Murray, 60. I mean, like a big article by him. Are they suppressing through these algorithms, social media outflow?
Well, it's outrageous that Consortium News and Mint Press were removed from PayPal without any explanation. No one knows why. There's no public explanation. And money
there must have been some reason why they did it. Was there some secret money? I mean, what was their justification?
I mean, I don't control these organizations, so I can't speak for them, but I would think that if there was something illicit taking place, PayPal would want to tell the public,
right,
and discredit these organizations that are just hammering them now in the public. Instead, PayPal looks like it's participating in a political censorship campaign. And Nina Jankowicz has gone after us at the Gray Zone, and she's gone after Consortium News. And she falsely accused us of being involved in a Russian disinformation operation. I mean, she just fabricated that.
Yeah,
she called us dangerous. She's basically argued for our censoring. And now I think those who are, the few sites that are making an impact, there are a few sites that are making an impact that are considered left. I don't actually consider the Gray Zone a leftist site. I mean, we're anti-imperialist. We do critical journalism, but I don't identify with a party or anything. But anyway, we're getting in the way of their narrative about Ukraine, it appears, and they're targeting us.
And so that's really the window because the country I've never seen hysteria like this. I wasn't around 1919. I was born in the mid 50s. So I missed the McCarthy era, the scare, the first Red Scare, post 9/11. I saw that, but this seems to be something that is going in a direction that is never going to come back. We are living in a very dangerous time right now, and that's why I'm doing this show. And maybe I'll get banned talking about Ukraine, because people got to know. All people saw was Jim Sciotto and Jim Acosta and these clowns at MSNBC, Richard Engel, give you one side of the story. I haven't seen MSNBC in 2 months, and I turned it on the other day. It was as if it was on rote, the same thing I had seen 2 months ago. Yeah. It's all Putin's bloodbath continues in Ukraine, just nonstop. I mean, it's wall to wall. Yeah. So go into that, Max. A man is saving a Ukrainian puppy and adopting Ukrainian children. It's just like this constant interchanging narrative that will not stop as soon as you turn on the news, and the 2 minutes of anti-Russian hate. But it's very particular to a certain class, so it makes it a little bit it's targeted to a certain class, and it makes it a little bit different than what we saw after 9/11, where the base of support for Bush's wars were the people who are now supporting, many of the people, not all, but many of the people who now watch Tucker Carlson every night and are disgusted by the 40 billion, who realized that Bush had sold them out with Iraq. And many of them actually knew people who were killed or injured fighting in those wars, or who went crazy. People who suffered the brunt of the opioid epidemic. People who suffered from outsourcing and the neoliberal shipping of their jobs overseas. These people are not
invested in Ukraine, nor are Black Americans. There's a huge, obvious effort to make Black Americans care about Ukraine, and you can see Black influencers being recruited. In Spanish language corporate media, you see it as well. They're pushing it really hard, but they're not going for it because of inflation, because of gas prices, because their economic situation is reaching dire levels, and food is becoming unaffordable in a country where it's plentiful. So they could care less about Ukraine. But I was just in Harper's Ferry yesterday in West Virginia. It's a touristy area. The area around where John Brown's raid took place is filled with these boutique kind of restaurants and pubs, and every other house had a Ukraine flag on it in this area. I mean, in DC, you see a good amount of them, but I had never been to a place. I felt like I was in like Lviv or something. It felt like I was in a small, quaint Ukrainian town. There were so many Ukrainian flags. And one house had a Ukrainian flag flanked or next to a Black Lives Matter flag and an LGBTQ flag, as if it's synonymous with those, as if it's some kind of progressive cause. It reminded me of like the Twitter bios, like all the emojis you see on blue check Twitter bios. It was insane. And it just shows how propaganda has permeated white affluent communities. I also saw Ukrainian flags in Republican areas of Orange County when I was there a few weeks ago. So it's particular to affluent, white, educated people on the coasts who really are invested in American empire and who are subjected to the propaganda that you get if you actually take CNN and MSNBC or NPR, National Propaganda Radio, or the New York Times seriously. I mean, they're all kind of one thing. And that set of people, you can call them the professional managerial class, they fall for everything. They were so into COVID. And then on February 24th, COVID ended for them, and they were so into hating Russia. And they don't think that there is any debate on these issues. When you confront them with a counter narrative, whether it's on COVID, Ukraine, or anything else that they're told to believe in by CNN, they just immediately write that off as QAnon conspiracy theorism and disinformation, because their ideology is reality. And they are the ultimate arbiters of the truth because they're the educated ones, they're the intelligentsia, they're working the knowledge economy jobs, and everybody else are stupid and crazy. And it turns out that the people who are the most suggestible now and the most easily duped happen to be some of our most educated neighbors and even friends.
Yeah, it's been very difficult to talk to a lot of my friends who I worked with over the years with the constant, not the constant, but when I was doing comedy and I was doing, work with civil rights stuff. I mean, people that I used to hang out with. I was at a restaurant the other day, and this friend of mine, he was like all over. He had like the blue and yellow flag on his lapel.
I don't understand I don't understand Jewish Americans who can get into this. This is the thing that really, I mean, I've been thinking about it.
Go ahead. Yeah, we only have that much, like 20 minutes. So I want you to talk about this, about how could Jewish Americans, when Ukraine basically worked with the Nazis, they were the most brutal with Jews than any of the Baltic states, any of the Eastern European countries that were occupied.
Yeah, it's just amazing to see so many Jewish American journalists and media influencers and even people I know display Ukrainian flags on their Twitter bios or on their front lawns, or they hang them outside their houses. When this is a state since 2014 that officially reveres the people who slaughtered our grandparents and great-grandparents in the Holocaust of bullets. The very people who led the SS Einsatzgruppen into Lvov for one of the worst pogroms of World War II, or Babi Yar, the slaughter of Jews in a mass grave, just shot and dumped in a mass grave after they were led out of their homes to be killed. These bastards, Stepan Bandera, Roman Shukevich, there are stadiums named after them around Ukraine. The streets, the boulevards of Kiev are named for Bandera. The street to Baba Yar is named for Bandera. There are national celebrations of Nazi war criminals in the heart of Kiev every year. A bill to ban the celebration of Nazi war criminals was struck down in the Ukrainian Rada, the Ukrainian parliament. Zelensky himself, Vladimir Zelensky, the supposedly Jewish president, himself said it is normal and even cool to revere Stepan Bandera, the founder of the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, which is the inspiration for the neo-Nazi Azov Battalion. And now you're not even allowed to call the Azov Battalion neo-Nazis in U.S. media. This is the
third rail. You can't do it.
Well, it's a third rail. Like, oh, it's like, yeah. I mean, you saw what happened to Pilger.
Yeah.
Anyone would get sacked if they said it now, because they're just called the defenders of Mariupol. That's what they call them, the defenders.
Well, tell us about this group. You've spoken about it so eloquently, this Azov Battalion. The people out there that don't know, although we do have an erudite audience.
Well, I got about 5 minutes here, but I'll try to make it quick.
You got
The
10.
The Azov Battalion is an outgrowth of a number of fascist organizations of hooligans that emerged after the collapse of the Soviet Union and were molded into political parties and kind of street militias. Most prominently, the Patriot of Ukraine, which was founded by Andrei Parubi, neo-fascist organizer in the 90s and 2000s. They were known for attacks on Roma gypsies, leftists, and migrants, brutal attacks, which they filmed and put online to, death metal, just classic fascist behavior. They had their little football hooligan clubs. Parubi ultimately, and in 2014, Parubi was seen leading the mobs in Maidan Square to overthrow the democratically elected president, Viktor Yanukovych, because he had signed an economic deal with Russia. And Parubi, soon after the coup, became the speaker of the Ukrainian parliament. This is a guy who helped found these neo-Nazi militias. His co-founder of the Social National Party, if it sounds like the National Socialist Party, that's because it was inspired by it. That was the political wing of the Patriot of Ukraine. Ole Tianbach, he became, he went into parliament as well and was like the head of the third most popular party. And the muscle on the Maidan Square that helped defeat and push back the Ukrainian riot police, known as the Berkut, that were protecting Yanukovych, who stormed City Hall, festooned Kiev City Hall with swastika flags, like Nazi flags, Confederate flags, and then took shelter in the Canadian embassy. They went to the east to fight and started training militarily with U.S. support, U.S. weapons, Canadian weapons, even Israeli weapons, to fight the People's Defense militias of the breakaway Donbass republics of Lugansk and Donetsk. And they committed heinous war crimes over the past 8 years. They took over Mariupol, the strategic port city by the Sea of Azov that is now been captured by Russia. They terrorized the ethnic Russian population of that city, of Kharkov, also another city with a large number of ethnic Russians near the Russian border. They purged the local legislators, disappeared a number of people who stood in the way of their agenda. They killed journalists, human rights advocates in Kiev in broad daylight on behalf of the Ukrainian state. And the goal was to basically eradicate all opposition to this nationalist vision that was resuscitated with the collapse of the Soviet Union, that George H.W. Bush actually warned about in his famous Chicken Kiev speech, when he warned about petty nationalism and deadly sectarianism coming back. Everything that he warned about has resurfaced with direct US involvement and support. And like I tweeted photos that were deleted from the Azov Battalion's own website that show US military officers and Canadian military officers meeting in an operations room with the commanders of the Azov Battalion in 2017. I mean, this relationship was never a secret. And these are people who not only openly revere neo-Nazis, but are themselves neo-Nazis, who have swastika tattoos, who openly revere Adolf Hitler and brutalize ethnic minorities in Ukraine. The advisor to the Kiev police force, which has been overseeing this brutal campaign of tying people to poles who are seen as disloyal or traitors and torturing them in public, including just Roma people who happen to get caught there. His name is Vadim Troyan, and he was a founder of one of these neo-fascist brigades known as the Right Sector. There's actually in the field right now against Russian troops a literal Freikorps named after the Nazi Freikorps. I mean, I could go on and on about this, but it's no secret. It's been no secret in U.S. mainstream media, but now if you're in U.S. mainstream media and you touch it or talk about it, that's your ass. You're out of there.
Wow. Yeah. Wait. I mean, nobody is. You don't hear Azov Battalion at all. The few times that I've peeked into mainstream media and read newspapers, mainstream media newspapers, I'm getting a call here. That you don't even hear the name, let alone they don't defend them and they don't promote them. I mean, they basically have been airbrushed out. And what is Zelensky? Give me this comic Zelensky. Everyone says, well, they can't be neo-Nazis because Zelensky's Jewish. Would you tell us about that?
Well, Zelensky was asked in an interview with one of the worst people on the planet, Bernard-Henri Lévy, about his Jewishness. Bernard-Henri Lévy is a French neoconservative philosopher who is Jewish himself, and he expresses his Judaism through support for apartheid Israel. He's not particularly religious, but he wanted to know about Zelensky's Jewishness. I think this was in 2018. And Zelensky just batted the question away. He was not interested in talking about being Jewish at all. It's something he never emphasized. And then in his first speech after Russia's forces enter Ukraine on February 24th, he begins to immediately play the Jewish card. Why? Because Putin said he wanted to denazify Ukraine, and he put the Azov Battalion front and center. And so Zelensky and his handlers, who actually control him and have been controlling him, made him into the Jewish president, and he's the perfect prop. I mean, he's not a prop. He's the perfect deflection from the reality on the ground. He's been fielding all these U.S. journalists, including Jewish journalists who, you would think would have some problems with Nazism, Jeffrey Goldberg, Jake Tapper, and they just worship him. And they actually think that this guy's in control. But Zelensky,
is he in control? I don't think he is.
No, Zelensky, if he had shown as much mettle and supposed courage against Ukrainian Nazis as he has against Putin and Russia, this war might not be happening. But he cowered before them. They confronted him, actually, when he went to try to enact a portion of the Minsk agreements. He met them in a town in 2019 called Zolota in the gray zone on the Donbass between the pro-Russian separatist side and the Ukrainian military side. And he said, pull back your weapons. We need to enact this agreement. The Organization for European Security and Cooperation is demanding it. And they were they just told him to go fuck himself. And he wound up basically being humiliated on camera by these neo-Nazi battalions and went back with his tail between his legs. And ever since then, he's had to ask permission from these forces to do anything. And now they're the teeth of the Ukrainian military. They're the most determined fighters. And Zelensky's the war president whose job is to go around the world campaigning for World War III.
Yeah. He's a combination of Zelig and Forrest Gump. He just kind of fell in there, and he's just a created figure, even though a created figurehead, but he doesn't seem like he's pulling any strings. He's just the PR guy. And he's the PR guy.
Yeah, exactly. And he's a good PR guy. He was in the past. Now I'm not so sure. We have an interview with the Ukrainian academic who studied Zelensky's career up at the Gray Zone. And she compares him to Pinochet because what he's done and what he had been doing until this war was just ramming through neoliberal austerity economics and screwing over the Ukrainians who supported him. And he had become deeply unpopular. So he's kind of like Pinochet. And then he has this repressive security mechanism at his disposal. He's ordering assassinations. He's supporting the disappearance of his foes. So he's a lot like Pinochet, a combination of Pinochet and maybe Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator, but unironically.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Max, we only have a minute or two left. We're just scratching the surface of all of this. And there's so much more that I wanted to talk to you about. Can you come back in the next couple of weeks? And I'll see you Tuesday. You'll be there at 1:00 in support of Julian Assange. But I want to thank you for all of your great work. We had John Pilger on at the top, a tape of him, and you're of that mold. And I say that to very few people. And I know it's not easy. What you do, being an investigative journalist and going out there and telling the truth, and trying to stay alive and make a living at the same time, because I know you got a lot of enemies out there. But
thanks a lot, Randy.
This is Max Blumenthal. You can catch him at the Gray Zone. Also, go to his Twitter account and see some very wonderful tweets, and pretty much is really, I love it because you got such a great sense of humor. That's what I like about the people I have on this show, through Assange, is you, John Pilger has great, Craig Murray, and Julian himself has a great sense of humor. And as difficult as the battle is, we all seem to be able to maintain our sense of humor, which may be what keeps us sane. I'll see you next week, folks. Max Blumenthal, once again. We're going to go out with a fan of yours, and I know you're a fan of his. This is the great Roger Waters. Dig this. This is a song that he gave us called The Bar last year. We got some photos courtesy of our editor and engineer, Kelly Lane. And we're going to go out with that. See you next week, folks.
Does everybody in the bar feel shame? Lord knows I do. I guess we all feel pretty much the same. Kind of wore out by this crazy fucking zoo. The smell of napalm with the cornflakes, the chafe of killing everything that breathes, imposing sanctions on the lady down the street. Till she takes the hint and packs her bags and leaves. Come on in here, sister, and set a spell. You're almost welcome in the bar. We may seem few, but we are many. Have you been traveling far? The girl who brought you in here is Lakota from Standing Rock, where they made their stand. So from Fort Yates, North Dakota, here's a message for the man. Would you kindly get the fuck off our land?